The film begins in 1845, from the perspective of a young woman. She is hung from a tree and has a mask nailed to her face before the townspeople set fire to her and speak an incantation while holding a doll to the woman's face. Her charred body is discovered hanging from a tree hours later. Currently, Jerry Fenn, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, a disgraced journalist in the town of Banfield, Massachusetts, receives word of something going on nearby. He goes to investigate because a farmer believes his cow has been marked by a cult, but Jerry believes it was simply the man's son who painted the Metallica M. Jerry then hears something that draws him to a nearby tree, where he discovers a burnt doll, similar to the one seen in the previous scene, with the date February 31, 1845 engraved on it. Jerry then steps on the doll's head, shattering it. Jerry is driving out of town that night when he notices a young woman, Alice Paget, Cricket Brown, in the middle of the road and swerves off the road. She approaches the same tree Jerry did earlier and mutters something before collapsing. Jerry takes her to the home of Alice's uncle, Father Hagen, William Sadler. He contacts Dr. Natalie Gates, Katie Asselton, and it is revealed that Alice is deaf-mute, which means Jerry would not have been able to hear her speak. Jerry is accused by Natalie of attempting to harm Alice. Jerry remains in Banfield in the hopes of obtaining a religious-themed story for his employers. He goes to church to hear Hagen preach, and during the sermon, Alice stands up after staring at a statue of the Virgin Mary and begins to walk out. People follow her and keep an eye on her as she walks to the tree. After a brief pause, Alice speaks again, surprising everyone. She claims to be hearing Mary's voice, who is requesting that everyone return to the tree the next day through Alice. While Natalie examines Alice, Jerry reports to his old boss, Monica Slade, Christine Adams. She reminds Jerry that he was dismissed for fabricating a tale, and she refuses to listen to what he has to say. Jerry subsequently has a dream about a ghostly woman creeping out of a nearby brook. The townsfolk come to the tree the next day to see if another miracle may be accomplished. Toby Walsh, Danny and Sonny Corbo, a young paraplegic youngster, is brought forward. Toby is told to walk by Alice, who speaks for Mary. To everyone's surprise, the youngster is capable of doing so. Jerry takes notes on the incident. Everyone starts praying to Mary. The Virgin Mary statue inside the cathedral looks to be crying blood. Jerry encounters Bishop Giles, Carrie Elwes, who is working with Monsignor Delgard, Diogo Morgado, who has been dispatched by the Vatican to examine if Alice indeed performed a heavenly miracle. Alice becomes a media celebrity, and the tree is designated as a shrine. Hagen walks up to the tree and notices the doll on the ground, all while a ghostly apparition follows him. Jerry arranges an interview with Alice, who claims that Mary informed her that Jerry misses the power he once had with his words, and that she saw someone in need of her assistance. Hagen arrives in private to speak with Jerry, and he begins coughing severely owing to his emphysema. He arrives to warn Jerry not to misuse Alice for selfish benefit. Jerry sits in with Delgard at church while Alice practices singing with Hagen. He begins to fall as a result of a strong coughing fit. While Jerry dials an ambulance, Alice rests her palm on Hagen's chest, and he begins breathing properly again. Natalie subsequently performs an X-ray on Hagen and compares it to one from a time ago, when his health appeared significantly worse. Now that everyone believes Alice actually restored Hagen's illness, the tree is officially designated as a shrine, and Banfield begins to see an increase in tourists. Jerry subsequently talks to Natalie about the doll, and she informs him that those specific dolls are intended to bring good luck, but they are also notorious for catching evil things and setting the impossible date, February 31st, to lock them inside forever. They then stroll by the brook he saw in his dream, and he sees the ghost once more. We cut to Hagen in the chapel after smoking a cigarette when he tells Natalie he wants to meet Hagen. He goes to confession and hears the voice of Mary, Marina Mazepa, denouncing him since she cured him, and he repaid her with skepticism about the miracle. When Hagen walks out, he is met by Mary's spirit, who attacks him. When Jerry arrives at the church, he discovers Hagen hanging by the neck in what appears to be a suicide attempt. After the doctors have removed his body, Jerry chats with Giles, who requests him to keep quiet about the rumor that a man of the cloth committed himself. Jerry interviews Alice again, and later that night, after examining the film, he slows it down to see something hidden, Mary's spirit momentarily flashing. During Hagen's burial, Jerry and Natalie investigate the church's basement, where they discover Latin manuscripts regarding demons and witches. They come to a written piece about Mary Elnor, who was a healer in her day, but anybody who questioned her would face a terrible death. The populace turned against Mary after she admitted to working for Satan. She was burned to death with the Virgin Mary's mask fastened to her face, her spirit trapped in the doll that Jerry broke. During the ceremony, Alice rises up and informs the congregation that Mary has asked them to assemble at the shrine for a special service. Jerry and Natalie are soon discovered and attacked by Mary's spirit, but they escape and go to alert Alice. Jerry and Natalie travel to the Archdiocese of Boston to present Giles and Delgard Hagen's findings on Mary, but while Giles was aware of this, Delgard remarks that he was never informed of it, and Giles doesn't want anything to disrupt the ceremony. Jerry subsequently conducts further research on Mary and discovers that before she died, she had a child who was adopted by a man called Nicholas Paget, implying that Alice is Mary's descendant, and Mary struck a pact with the devil to live on via her children, their children, and so on. Jerry is assailed again by Mary's spirit, but Delgard repels her, having realized what Jerry was talking about. Delgard joins Jerry and Natalie in heading to the church to bless the doll and seek to restore Mary's soul into the doll as Giles prepares the shrine ritual. When Delgard sets fire to it, the flames grow up to the enormous cross on the wall, which falls off and impales Delgard, putting him on fire. Jerry and Natalie dash out the door and over to the service. The service is well begun, with Mary preparing to absorb all of the townspeople's faith in order to grow more powerful. When Jerry and Natalie arrive, they understand that the only way to stop Mary is for everyone in the room to question her ability. Jerry informs the audience that he staged the entire event and that Alice is not a healer. He invents some details about what happened, such as her hearing and Toby walking, but maintains these are only medical consequences. When Natalie joins in, the audience begins to boo and abandon their faith. Mary gets enraged and proceeds to set fire to the tree. The people flee just as her spirit appears and attempts to strike. Natalie pulls Toby out to safety after he loses control of his legs again. Giles tries to pacify the spirit, but Mary pushes her hand against his breast, dissolving him. When she pursues Jerry, Alice gets in the way and takes a whack. Mary's spirit can no longer go on because she murdered her final descendant, and she screams as she slips into nothingness. Jerry clutches Alice's corpse and begs God for her survival. Jerry then wakes her up and cuddles her. Jerry and Natalie accompany Alice to Hagen's grave to pay their respects. Jerry discovers a means to speak with Alice despite the fact that she is once again deaf-mute. He informs Natalie that he is amazed that Alice survived because she had no pulse and was not breathing when he held her, but Natalie believes that God truly performed a miracle. Following their departure, we notice a phrase from Matthew chapter 7 verse 15, which says, "Beware of false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves." The figure of the Virgin Mary crying blood is the last thing we see. In the town of Banfield, Massachusetts, writer Jerry Fenn discovers and destroys a tree containing a mystery doll. He subsequently encounters a girl called Alice Paget, who is deaf-mute, but after approaching the tree, she talks and claims to hear the Virgin Mary's voice instructing her to speak to the community and do miracles. After Alice heals a paraplegic youngster and her uncle, the town's priest Father Hagen, from emphysema, the residents believe she is a healer, and the tree is turned into a shrine. Jerry and Dr. Natalie Gates find from their investigation that the doll Jerry shattered was intended to imprison the spirit of a lady named Mary Elnor, who had healing skills but was working through Satan, so the villagers affixed a mask to her face and burned her alive while capturing her spirit in the doll. Furthermore, she struck a bargain with the devil to live on through her descendants, of which Alice is the present descendant. When Hagen returns to smoking after Mary heals him, he is slain by Mary's ghost, while Monsignor Delgard from the Vatican is killed in the church while attempting to restore Mary's spirit to the doll. Jerry and Natalie attend a service at the shrine where Mary intends to use Alice to acquire more power via the devotion of the townsfolk. Jerry and Natalie persuade the audience that Alice is a phony, which enrages Mary and summons her spirit. She assassinates the cunning Bishop Giles as he attempts to intercede, but when she goes for Jerry, Alice gets in the way and takes Mary's strike. Mary can no longer exist because she killed her descendant, and her spirit is shattered. Jerry prays for Alice's survival, and she begins to awaken. However, it is intimated by an image of a Virgin Mary statue crying blood that Mary can still return.